Physics said it shouldn't have been possible. Every police report, every medical assessment, every rational explanation later agreed on that single point. A malnourished homeless girl weighing barely 100 pounds should not have been able to drag a fully grown man, well over 200 pounds, from a sinking car submerged in icy black water. And yet, she did. What the official records never explained was why the man had no heartbeat when she pulled him out, why his skin felt colder than the water itself, or why, 3 minutes after being declared clinically dead, his eyes opened. They also never explained why the girl's life changed forever the moment she chose kindness over fear. The rain had been falling over Portland like a punishment that night. Not the gentle kind. Not the romantic drizzle people wrote poems about. This rain was violent, relentless, hammering the city until streets gleamed like mirrors and every alley smelled of rust and rot. For Elena Cross, rain was just another enemy. At 22 years old, she owned nothing but a torn backpack, a threadbare hoodie, and a pair of shoes that had lost their soles months ago. She slept wherever she could, under bridges, behind abandoned storefronts, or sometimes inside the skeletal remains of her old sedan before it was finally towed away. Tonight, she had chosen the edge of the river road. It was dangerous. Everyone knew that. But the overpass blocked the wind, and the security patrols rarely came this far after midnight. Elena sat curled against a concrete barrier, knees pulled to her chest, arms wrapped tight as if she could hug warmth back into her bones. Hunger gnawed at her stomach. Her last meal had been half a stale sandwich someone left on a park bench earlier that day. She wasn't thinking about the future. Survival didn't allow for that. She was just trying to get through the night. That was when she heard it. A sound so sharp and sudden it sliced through the rain like a scream. Tires shrieking. Metal screaming. A violent, sickening crash. Elena looked up just in time to see headlights spin wildly through the darkness. A black luxury car, sleek, expensive, wildly out of place on this neglected road, hit the guardrail, shattered through it, and vanished over the edge. There was a half-second of silence. Then a thunderous splash. The car plunged straight into the river. Elena's heart slammed against her ribs. People didn't survive that. The river was swollen from days of rain, currents fast and unforgiving. Even strong swimmers avoided it at night. Elena stood anyway. Her body moved before her mind could catch up. Most people would have called for help. Most people would have waited. Most people would have told themselves it wasn't their problem. But Elena had spent her whole life watching people look away. She ran. Shoes slipping, lungs burning, rain blinding her as she sprinted toward the river's edge. The black car was already sinking, nose first, disappearing beneath churning water like it was being swallowed whole. Someone was inside. She could see it. A silhouette through the cracked windshield. Elena didn't think about the cold. Didn't think about the current. Didn't think about how badly this could end. She jumped. The water hit her like knives. It stole the breath from her lungs instantly, freezing her muscles, sending shockwaves of pain through her chest. She barely managed to surface before being dragged under again by the river's pull. The car was sinking fast. Elena dove. The water was dark, thick with debris. She reached the driver's side just as the cabin flooded completely. The window was shattered, jagged glass lining the frame like teeth. Inside, slumped over the steering wheel, was a man. He was massive. Broad shoulders. Thick arms. Built like someone who had never known weakness. He wore a tailored black coat, now billowing underwater like a funeral shroud. Elena grabbed him. And nearly screamed. He didn't feel human. Not just heavy, dense. As if every bone in his body was made of stone. She pulled. Nothing. Her lungs burned. Panic clawed at her chest. She kicked harder, braced her feet against the car frame, and screamed underwater as she yanked with everything she had left. Something snapped. The man came free. Getting him to the surface felt impossible. He sank instead of floating. Elena looped her arm around his chest, legs kicking furiously as the river fought to claim them both. Her vision blurred. Black spots danced at the edges. Then air. She dragged him toward the embankment, scraping skin, tearing clothes, hands numb and useless as she hauled his weight inch by inch onto solid ground. By the time she collapsed beside him, she was shaking uncontrollably. Rain soaked them both. Elena rolled him onto his back and pressed trembling fingers to his neck. No pulse. She leaned down, ear to his chest. Nothing. Her heart sank. "I'm sorry," she whispered, voice breaking. "I tried." That was when she saw it. A wound. Right over his heart. A deep, jagged tear in his chest. Too clean, too deliberate to be from the crash. And yet there was no blood. The flesh around it was gray, lifeless, as if it had been dead long before the river ever touched him. Elena's hands shook. This man hadn't just drowned. He'd been dying already. She reached for her backpack, fumbling for her phone, fingers numb, and then his hand closed around her wrist. Hard. Too hard. Elena screamed. The man's eyes opened. They weren't brown. They weren't blue. For a split second, in the flash of lightning, they glowed deep crimson, like embers buried beneath obsidian. He inhaled, not a gasp but a sharp, unnatural hiss, like something ancient waking after centuries of sleep. His chest rose. Elena watched in paralyzed terror as the wound over his heart began to close. Skin knitting. Flesh sealing. Until only a pale scar remained. He sat up smoothly, effortlessly, like death had never touched him. Towering. Silent. Watching her. Rain ran down his sharp cheekbones. His gaze moved over her torn clothes, her bruised hands, her shaking body curled instinctively backward. You pulled me out, he said. His voice was low. Come. Commanding. Each word seemed to vibrate in her bones. Elena nodded, unable to speak. For a long moment he simply stared at her. Then distant sirens wailed. His head snapped toward the sound. Something dark passed over his expression. He reached into his soaked coat, withdrew a heavy metal card case and placed it gently in her hands. Take this, he said. And leave. Now. Elena's fingers closed around it instinctively. If they find you here with me, he continued quietly, you will not survive what follows. She blinked. And then he was gone. 1 second standing before her. The next, nothing but rain and shadows. Elena sat there shaking, clutching the cold metal case, staring at the empty riverbank where a dead man had stood. She didn't know his name. She didn't know what he was. She only knew one thing. Saving him had just tied her fate to something far older, and far more dangerous, than she could ever imagine. Elena Cross didn't sleep that night. She walked until her legs trembled, clutching the cold metal case beneath her hoodie like it might vanish if she loosened her grip. Sirens echoed behind her for hours, patrol lights flashing across the river road she had fled, but no one stopped her. No one noticed her. No one ever did. By dawn she was back beneath the overpass. Her hands were raw, scraped bloody from dragging a stranger out of the river. Her lungs still burned. Her body ached in places she didn't know could hurt. But it was her mind that wouldn't rest. The eyes. The wound. The way he healed. And the weight. She opened the case with shaking fingers. Inside were neatly stacked bills, crisp, clean, untouched by rain. Elena counted once. Then again. Then a third time because her brain refused to accept it. $10,000. Her chest tightened. She should have felt relief, joy, gratitude. This money could change everything. Food, shelter, safety. Instead, fear crept in. People didn't give this kind of money without a reason. And monsters didn't thank people at all. The city exploded with the news before noon. Elena stood outside a pawnshop window, drawn by the television mounted above the counter inside. The headline scrolled in bold white letters. Tech tycoon Adrian Vale presumed dead in river crash. Her breath caught. The screen filled with his face. Dry. Composed. Powerful. Adrian Vale. CEO of Vale Industries. Reclusive billionaire. International philanthropist. A man rumored to control entire markets with a phone call. A man officially declared dead, his body never recovered. The anchor spoke in measured tones about an accident, about speed and rain and tragedy. They didn't mention the wound in his chest. They didn't mention the way he sank like stone. They didn't mention the homeless girl who pulled him from death itself. Elena staggered back, heart pounding. She had saved him. A king among men. And he had disappeared like smoke. Reality returned swiftly. By afternoon, hunger dragged Elena back to the places that tolerated her existence. She lined up outside a downtown soup kitchen, shoulders hunched, eyes lowered. The volunteer barely glanced at her as he slapped a tray into her hands. Move it, he muttered. She sat alone. Always alone. Nearby, a group of college kids laughed loudly, wrinkling their noses as they passed her table. God, it smells, one whispered, not quietly enough. Elena stared at her soup. She was used to this. Invisible when she wanted kindness. Hypervisible when people wanted something to mock. Later, as she walked toward the public restroom to wash her hands, a security guard blocked her path. You can't loiter here, he said flatly. She began. No excuses, he snapped. We've had complaints. Complaints about her existence. She turned away, cheeks burning, stomach still half empty. She told herself the money didn't change who she was. Not yet. That night, the rain returned. Elena sought shelter near the old train yard, pulling her hoodie tight as thunder rolled overhead. She counted the money again, debating whether to risk a cheap motel for one night. That was when a black sedan rolled silently onto the gravel. Her blood ran cold. The car didn't splash, didn't roar. It moved like a shadow. The door opened. A woman stepped out. Tall, elegant, impeccably dressed in a charcoal coat that didn't belong in places like this. Elena Cross, the woman said calmly. Elena took a step back. I don't want trouble, Elena whispered. The woman studied her with sharp, assessing eyes. My name is Seraphine Vale, she said. You saved my brother. Elena's heart stopped. Brother. So he was real. So he's alive, Elena said softly. Seraphine's lips curved, not in a smile. Alive is a flexible term, she replied. He wishes to see you. Elena shook her head. I didn't do it for money. I didn't do it for... You did it because you're kind, Seraphine interrupted. That's why he needs you. Needs. The word settled heavy in Elena's chest. Before she could respond, the air shifted. The rain slowed. The world seemed to hold its breath. And then he stepped from the shadows. Adrian Vale. No, King Adrian, her instinct screamed. He looked different than he had in the rain-soaked darkness. Clean. Regal. His presence bent the space around him, pulling attention like gravity. His eyes found her. They weren't glowing now, but they were just as terrifying. You should have let me sink, he said quietly. Elena swallowed. You would have died. Pause. Then softly, yes. That answer chilled her more than the rain ever could. He moved closer, towering but unthreatening, his gaze never leaving hers. Do you know what you did when you pulled me from that river? He asked. She shook her head. You disrupted a war, he said. And marked yourself under ancient law. Her breath hitched. I don't understand. You will, Adrian said. Because from this night forward, you are under my protection. Protection. The word felt unreal. She laughed weakly. People like me don't get protected. Adrian's jaw tightened. Not until now. In the distance, voices echoed, rough, drunken, approaching fast. A group of men emerged from behind the railcars. Hey, one shouted. This area's taken. Elena's body tensed automatically. She stepped back, straight into Adrian's shadow. The men stopped. They saw him. Something primal flickered across their faces. Fear. Adrian didn't raise his voice. Didn't move fast. He simply looked at them. And the night seemed to darken around his eyes. Leave, he said. They ran. Elena stared. No one had ever defended her without being asked. Adrian turned back to her. You are not invisible anymore, he said. And the world will not forgive that. She looked up at him, rain dripping from her lashes. What do you want from me? She asked. For the first time, uncertainty crossed his face. I don't know, he admitted. But I know this, your kindness pulled me back from death. He extended his hand. And now, I will pull you out of the life that's been drowning you. Elena hesitated. Then placed her small, trembling hand in his. Elena had imagined many things hell might look like. Fire. Darkness. Screaming. She had never imagined it would look like a penthouse overlooking the city, wrapped in glass and steel, floating above the world like it didn't belong to it. The elevator ride alone felt unreal. It rose silently, smoothly, higher than any building she had ever been inside. Elena stood stiffly near the back wall, hands clasped in front of her, trying not to stare at her reflection in the mirrored surface. She barely recognized herself, soaked clothes, tangled hair, bruises blooming along her wrists and knuckles. She looked like a mistake that had wandered into the wrong world. Adrian stood beside her, motionless, hands folded behind his back like a ruler awaiting judgment. He hadn't touched her since the train yard, but his presence filled the space, steady and unyielding. Every time Elena's nerves threatened to spiral, she reminded herself of one thing. He hadn't hurt her. Not once. The doors slid open. Warm light spilled out, chasing away the chill that had lived in Elena's bones for years. The air smelled faintly of cedar and something darker, iron maybe or old stone. She stepped out hesitantly. The penthouse wasn't flashy. No gold statues. No excessive luxury. It felt ancient. Stone walls embedded with modern architecture. Tall arched windows. Shadows that clung too long in the corners. Candles burned despite the electric lights, their flames steady, unnatural. Elena swallowed. This place feels alive, she murmured before she could stop herself. Adrian glanced at her sharply. It is, he said. That should have terrified her. Instead it made sense. Servants appeared silently. Not human. Elena knew it instantly, not because of their eyes or faces, but because of the way they moved. Too smooth. Too precise. Like predators wearing politeness. They bowed to Adrian. Deeply. "My king," they said in unison. Elena's heart stumbled. "King. Not CEO. Not billionaire. King." Adrian didn't correct them. "This is Elena Cross," he said. "She is under my protection." The servants' gazes shifted to her. Curiosity. Calculation. Something colder. She hugged her arms around herself, fighting the instinct to apologize for existing. "Yes, my king," they replied. Protection. The word echoed again. Elena was given clothes. Soft. Clean. Too nice. She held them awkwardly, staring at the simple dress and slippers laid out for her. "I can't wear these," she said quietly. Adrian looked at her. "Why?" "They're expensive." "So are you," he replied. She blinked. No one had ever said that to her before. Not as a joke. Not as a transaction. He turned away, clearly uncomfortable with the moment. "Bathe," he said. "Eat. Rest. We will speak after." "After what?" She didn't ask. The bath was overwhelming. Hot water wrapped around her, sinking into muscles that had never truly relaxed. Elena cried silently as dirt and blood washed away, as if the years of being unseen were dissolving down the drain. When she finished, she ate slowly, nervously, half expecting someone to snatch the food away. But no one did. No one rushed her. No one scolded her for crumbs. For the first time in years she slept in a bed. A real one. She woke screaming. Hands clawing at sheets. The room was dark, the shadows longer, thicker. "Elena." Adrian's voice cut through the panic. He was sitting nearby, chair angled toward her bed as if he had been there all night. She gasped. I didn't mean to." "You're safe," he said immediately. The words were firm. Absolute. Her breathing slowed despite herself. "You dreamt," he continued. "Your heart rate spiked." "You were watching me?" she whispered. "Yes." She waited for embarrassment. It never came. Instead, warmth spread through her chest. No one had ever stayed. The days that followed felt like walking through a dream that could shatter at any moment. Elena learned quickly. This building wasn't just a home, it was a court. Vampires moved through its halls openly now, no longer pretending. Some were beautiful. Some were monstrous. All were powerful. And all of them bowed to Adrian. Some watched her with open disdain. Others with curiosity. One woman in particular made no effort to hide her contempt. Lady Morel. She was ancient. Elena could feel it in her bones. Her beauty was sharp, cruel, preserved like a weapon. "A human," Morel sneered during one gathering. In the king's home. Elena stood frozen, heat flooding her face. "She saved my life," Adrian said coldly. Morel laughed softly. "Humans save what they're allowed to save." That night, Elena overheard whispers. "She doesn't belong. She's weak. She'll break." Elena retreated to a quiet balcony, hands gripping the stone railing, city lights flickering far below. Maybe they were right. She didn't belong here. Adrian found her there. "You're thinking of leaving?" he said. "I don't want to cause trouble," she replied. "Your world doesn't want me." He stepped closer. "My world obeys me," he said simply. She looked up at him. "Why are you doing this?" Adrian was silent for a long moment. "Because," he said finally, "you pulled me from the river when the world would have let me sink." She frowned. "You could have survived." "Yes," he said. "But you didn't know that." Her heart skipped. "You acted without expecting reward," he continued. "That is rare." A sudden commotion echoed from the hall. A servant rushed in, eyes wide. "My king, Lady Morel has challenged the human's presence." Elena stiffened. "I'll go." Adrian's eyes darkened. "No," he said. He turned toward the hall. "They will learn." The court gathered. Morel stood at the center, smug, confident. "A human threatens our secrecy," she declared. "She knows too much." Elena's legs trembled. Adrian stepped forward. "She is under my protection." Morel smiled. "Then test her." The room went still. "Humans break," Morel said. "Let us see how fragile she truly is." A cruel power pressed down on Elena's chest. Vampiric dominance. Her knees buckled. Pain flared behind her eyes. She gasped. And didn't fall. The room stirred. Elena planted her feet. She didn't scream. Didn't beg. She lifted her head and met Morel's gaze. Something ancient stirred inside her chest. Something that answered the pressure instead of yielding. Morel's smile faltered. Adrian stared. The air vibrated. Elena swayed but stayed standing. Silence crashed over the court. Adrian's voice cut through it, low and lethal. Enough. The pressure vanished. Morel stepped back, shaken. Adrian turned to Elena, eyes searching her face. "What are you?" he whispered, not in fear but awe. Elena shook her head. "I don't know," she said honestly. But deep down she felt it. She had survived things no one should. And something had survived with her. Power leaves a scent. Elena didn't know how else to describe it. Ever since the night in the court, since she had resisted something that should have crushed her, the air around her felt different. Thicker. Where? Vampires who once ignored her now watched from doorways, conversations dying the moment she entered a room. Fear had replaced contempt. That frightened her more than the insults ever had. Elena tried to keep her head down. She helped where she could, spoke only when spoken to, and avoided Lady Morel entirely. But something had shifted inside the palace, and inside Adrian. He was watching her now. Not like before. Not just guarding. Studying. It happened 3 nights later. Elena was in the lower library, a forgotten wing lined with old stone and older books. She liked it there. The silence didn't judge her. The history didn't sneer. She ran her fingers along cracked spines, reading titles in languages she didn't recognize. Then she stopped. Her chest tightened. She could read them. Not the letters but the meaning. Understanding bloomed instinctively, like remembering something she'd always known. Elena. She turned sharply. Adrian stood in the doorway. The shadows curled toward him like they recognized their master. "You're not supposed to be here," she said nervously. "I know," he replied. His eyes flicked to the book in her hands. "That text is written in Old Nocturne." "I don't know what that is," she said. "But you understand it," he said quietly. Her fingers trembled. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. "It just makes sense." Adrian stepped closer. "Nothing about you is accidental," he said. That night Elena told him the truth. They sat across from each other in the quietest chamber of the palace, candles burning low. "I don't remember my parents," she said. "I grew up in foster homes. Ran away at 16. Lived on the streets after that." Adrian listened without interruption. "There were times," she continued, voice barely steady, "when I should have died. Winter nights. Hunger. Violence." She swallowed. "But something always pulled me through." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Show me your back," he said gently. She hesitated, then turned. Her shirt lifted, and the room went very still. Scars crisscrossed her skin, not random, not chaotic. They formed a symbol. Ancient. Royal. Adrian stood slowly. "No," he breathed. His hand hovered inches from her skin, not touching. "That mark belongs to an extinct bloodline," he said. "One erased before my reign." Elena turned back, heart racing. "What does that mean?" "It means," Adrian said carefully, "you were protected long before I ever met you." They were interrupted by a scream. A servant burst into the chamber, face pale. "My king, there has been an attack." The palace shook. Screams echoed. Steel clashed. Adrian moved instantly. "Elena, stay here." She nodded, then didn't. She followed. Chaos had erupted in the outer hall. Vampires lay shattered against stone, bodies disintegrating into ash. Shadows writhed unnaturally, torn apart by something violent and precise. Lady Morel stood at the center. Her smile was gone. "This ends now," she hissed. "The girl threatens everything." She raised her hand, and the power surged again. Stronger. Sharper. Elena cried out as pain lanced through her skull. Adrian roared. He moved faster than Elena could track, slamming Morel into the far wall with bone-shattering force. But she laughed. "You feel it now, don't you?" Morel taunted. "She's waking." She struck back. Adrian staggered. Blood splattered the marble floor. Elena screamed. Time slowed. She ran. Straight toward them. "Elena, no!" Adrian shouted. She reached Morel. And something exploded. Light. Darkness. Power. Elena didn't feel pain. She felt clarity. The pressure vanished. Morel froze, eyes wide in terror. "What are you?" she whispered. Elena looked down at her own hands. They were glowing faintly, marked with the same ancient symbol from her back. Adrian stared in shock. Elena pushed. Morel flew backward, screaming, body unraveling into ash before she hit the wall. Silence crashed down. Elena swayed. Adrian caught her. For the first time since she met him, he was shaking. "You're hurt," she whispered, touching his chest. Blood stained his shirt. Vampire blood. Red as any human's. "I didn't think you could bleed," she said. His eyes softened. "Neither did I," he admitted. He cupped her face. Gently. Reverently. "You are not a burden," he said. "You are not weak." She leaned into his touch, exhausted. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I," he said. And in that shared fear, something broke open between them. Trust. Elena woke to silence. Not the peaceful kind. The wrong kind. The candles in her chamber were unlit. The air felt hollow, like something essential had been ripped out of it. Her body ached, every muscle sore, her head pounding as if she had been screaming for hours. She sat up slowly. The bed wasn't in the palace. Stone walls surrounded her, rough, damp, carved deep beneath the city. Chains etched with glowing runes circled the room, humming with a low, poisonous energy that made her skin crawl. Panic surged. "Adrian," she called. Her voice echoed back to her, small and fragile. Footsteps approached. A figure stepped into the torchlight. Valerius, Adrian's closest advisor. The one who always bowed deepest. The one who had smiled kindly at her since the beginning. Betrayal hit harder than fear. "You?" Elena whispered. Valerius inclined his head. "My queen, no. Forgive me. My vessel." Her heart dropped. "What did you do?" He smiled sadly. "What I had to." Above ground, the palace was screaming. Adrian stood in the ruined outer hall, blood still staining his hands, his coat torn, his eyes burning brighter than any had ever seen them. "Elena," he growled. She was gone. No trace. No scent. No warning. The court trembled. Seraphine stood beside him, pale. "The runes, they blocked your bond." Adrian's control snapped. The chandeliers shattered. Stone cracked. Several vampires dropped to their knees under the sheer weight of his rage. "Find her," he said, voice no longer human. "Or pray you never see dawn again." Below the city, Elena struggled against the chains. "They hurt him," she said desperately. "I felt it. You're killing him." Valerius's expression flickered with something like regret. "He was never meant to love," he said. "Kings who love become weak. We lost everything once because of it." He stepped closer. "You are the last living conduit of the blood-bound line," he continued. "Your power can stabilize our kind. And the wars. End the hunger." "You're lying," Elena said through clenched teeth. "I'm desperate," he corrected gently. She closed her eyes. And remembered. Cold nights. Strange dreams. A woman's voice whispering in the dark. "Endure." Her scars burned. The chains cracked. Valerius stumbled back in shock. "No," he breathed. "You're not fully awakened yet." She opened her eyes. And smiled sadly. "You should have waited." Adrian tore through the city like a storm-given flesh. Warehouses burned. Underground dens collapsed. Those who resisted didn't scream long. This wasn't justice. It was extinction. When he finally reached the chamber beneath the city, the walls were already cracked, the runes flickering weakly. "Elena," he whispered. The doors exploded inward. He froze. She stood in the center of the room, glowing faintly, chains shattered at her feet. Alive. Oh, stronger. Relief nearly broke him. Valerius fell to his knees. "My king, listen." Adrian didn't. One step. One strike. Valerius turned to ash before he hit the ground. Elena flinched. Adrian stopped instantly. He looked at her like she was the only thing holding him to the world. "I thought I lost you," he said, voice raw. She crossed the room and placed her hands on his chest. "You didn't," she said softly. "But you would have, if you kept going." He bowed his head to her. The court would never forget that sight. They stood together in the ruins. "I don't know what I am," Elena said quietly. "Or what I'll become." Adrian met her gaze. "Then we'll learn together," he said. "As equals." She took a breath. And nodded. Dawn had not touched the palace in over a century. It wasn't forbidden. It simply never mattered. But on the morning after the city nearly burned, light crept across the eastern windows for the first time in generations. Thin, hesitant, like the world itself was unsure whether it was allowed back in. Elena stood at the glass watching it happen. She wore simple clothes again. No silk. No jewels. No armor of status. Just fabric that felt like her own skin. Behind her, the palace was silent. Too silent. Powerful places always were after something historic happened. The vampire court gathered at dusk. Not summoned. Compelled. They filled the grand hall slowly, tensely, ancients and fledglings alike, each one aware that the world had tilted and there was no going back. Whispers moved like smoke. She survived the chains. She stopped him. She calmed the king. She commands him. Elena felt every word. She stood at the center of the hall, alone. Adrian had not taken the throne. He stood beside it, waiting. That alone shook the court. Seraphine stepped forward. By ancient law, she announced, the blood-bound line stands revealed. A ripple of unease passed through the vampires. Elena lifted her chin. I didn't ask for this, she said clearly. I didn't know what I was. I didn't even know I mattered. Her voice didn't shake. But I know what I've been. She met their gazes, one by one. I was ignored, starved, hurt, judged, thrown away. The hall grew heavier with every word. And still, she continued, I chose to help. Not because I was strong, but because someone needed it. She turned toward Adrian. And so did he. Adrian's eyes burned. Not with hunger. With devotion. A noble vampire sneered from the shadows. Power belongs to blood, not sentiment. Elena looked at him calmly. Then why did your blood kneel when I stood? She asked. Silence slammed down. The noble dropped to one knee without meaning to. Then another. And another. Until the entire court was kneeling. Except Adrian. He stepped forward. And kneeled before her. Gasps filled the hall. My king, someone whispered. Adrian spoke without looking up. I was crowned by fear, he said. I ruled by force. He lifted his head, eyes locked on Elena. But she ruled me, by kindness. He reached out. Not as my subject, he said. Not as my destiny. He swallowed. As my equal. Elena's heart thundered. All her life she had been chosen last. Left behind. Overlooked. Now the most powerful being in this world was asking, not commanding. She placed her hand in his. I won't be your weapon, she said softly. I would never ask you to be, Adrian replied. I won't rule through fear. Then we will rule through change, he said. She took a breath. And nodded. The coronation was quiet. No roaring crowds. No blood rituals. Just an ancient crown, older than the palace itself, lowered onto Elena's head. It did not burn. It did not reject her. It settled. Like it had been waiting. The court bowed. Not in terror. In respect. Weeks passed. The city changed. Feeding laws were rewritten. Human protection accords were enforced. Underground cruelty vanished overnight. Vampires who abused power disappeared just as quickly. Justice, Elena learned, didn't need cruelty to be effective. Adrian watched her from the shadows, pride softening every sharp edge he once wore. One night, on the same balcony where she had once felt she didn't belong, Elena turned to him. Do you ever miss being feared? She asked. He smiled faintly. I was never lonely, he said. Until I wasn't feared anymore. She stepped closer. And now? He brushed his thumb across her knuckles. Now, he said, I'm not alone. They never rushed it. No grand declarations. No dramatic claims. Love grew in shared silence, in protection freely given, in trust earned rather than demanded. The world saw a queen rise. But Adrian saw something else. A girl who once slept under bridges. Who dragged a monster from a river. Who chose mercy over power. Who changed everything.